Welcome to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. I am the one and only Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week, guitarist Reb Beach of Whitesnake and, of course, Winger, having also spent some time with Alice Cooper and Dokken. We talk about all of that and his solo career and all that wonderful stuff. On the other side of the coin, we have got the one, the only Christian Lamb, director of Mötley Crüe's The End movie. We talk about getting the shots together and getting that whole concert experience brought and captured live for the audience. It is coming to a big screen near you very, very soon. So let's get this one started. First up, guitarist extraordinaire, the one, the only. Here he is, Reb Beach. We are speaking with Whitesnake guitarist Reb Beach. Good day, Reb.
Good day, Mitch. How are you?
Good. Pleasure to talk to you. You know, I've had a chance to speak with you backstage at shows, but I think our last interview actually goes back to your Masquerade album. Which is
2003.
Yeah, or 2001 even, wasn't it? I think it was before.
Oh, was it 2000? Oh,
so,
yeah,
well,
maybe
whatever.
you're right.
But whether it's 15 years or 12 years, it's been a heck of a long time. So before we get into Whitesnake, let me ask you about that. Since it's been that long, are there any plans for a Reb Beach solo album?
I'd love to do another one. That was the hardest thing I ever did, and it took me a really long time because I had to do everything. You know, I produced it, and it was like my baby for years, and I wasn't touring as much when I wrote that stuff. And since then, I've been touring every year. And, we're between the two bands that I'm in right now, I just haven't really had time to do that. And also, I've been working on my solo album that is instrumental forever. And I'm like sick of it already, but it's really, really good. And it's done. I just need the drummer to come in and play drums on it, and that takes a couple days, and that's it. It's really, really, really good. I'm really proud of it. But like as I was doing it, I was shopping it around to labels, and they were all saying the same thing: we're not interested in an instrumental record, So I learned kind of the hard way that maybe I should have done another album with vocals.
Is there a way to take that instrumental? Sorry, sorry to interrupt. Is there a way to take that instrumental and put some vocals? No, not at all, huh?
Not at all. It's jazz fusion.
Oh, well, yeah. little tough to scat over that stuff.
Yeah, that's funny. That's what the two labels I went to asked me, can you sing over it? I'm like, yeah.
Well, there you go. And other than that solo album, have you been writing material for either a new Whitesnake or a new Winger album?
I'm guitar riff writing guy. And that's always my main contribution to a song is writing the guitar riff. And I just have hundreds of riffs. I'm like Prince when it comes to guitar riffs. I've got, a million of them that I don't even remember. They're all just recorded in my studio, and Kip is ready to put out another Winger record, to write another Winger record. So we've just been waiting for David to calm his schedule down, as he usually does, to get together and write that record. It takes us a couple weeks to write a record, the basis for a record, and we'll tour it next year if David doesn't go out.
Yeah, so that's what we're here for. So let's talk about David and the Greatest Hits Whitesnake tour. Talk to me a little bit about how you first got the gig, because you had done, obviously, Winger, and you had done Dokken, and you had done Alice Cooper, and a bunch of other stuff. I mean, your CV, if you want to call it, is extensive. How did you get into Whitesnake?
I wanted the gig badly. And I called everyone I knew and said, do you know someone in the Whitesnake camp? Because Whitesnake's impossible to get in touch with because David doesn't have a manager. And, he kind of works for himself. He's got a right-hand man. And I found out who that right-hand man was. And I sent him everything I had on me. And And there was a bunch of guitar players that were all vying for the same gig. The reason I got it was because I can sing. That's the only reason I got it.
Well, and you can play a mean guitar too, but why was the Whitesnake? Well, yeah, I mean, why was the Whitesnake gig itself so attractive to you?
What do you think? I mean, how many gigs for a guy like me are there? Like I'm a flashy 80s guitar player. Like, okay, how many gigs are there? Like 0. So it was perfect for me. I mean, absolutely perfect. Flashy guitar player guy playing 80s music. That's what I do.
Yeah, so
I got a big stamp on my head. I auditioned I didn't audition, but I put my stuff in for Rod Stewart, and I didn't get it. And I talked to the Rod Stewart guys like a year later, and they're like, you're 80s guy. I mean, you weren't going to get that gig. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I auditioned for Hall & Oates, and I didn't get it.
Really? Okay. So
I was too nervous.
So talk to me about that, because, listen, Winger had its moment with, of course, the Beavis and Butthead and all that nonsense. How do you change the perception in the marketplace or, within the industry that you're not just 80s guitar guy?
Well, I think Kip Winger did it. He just pounded the pavement with his acoustic guitar and said, let's see any of those guys do this. And, he's just this huge talent. And if anyone that sees him live knows that that's, just all crap from the 80s, the whole, Beavis and Butthead poser-y thing. Kip's just an unbelievably talented guy. And I think most people now, especially people that enjoy music, know that Kip is the real deal.
Well, and not just Kip. I mean, the entire band, the entire Winger band is, for lack of a better word, it's like 4 musos. I mean, it's musicianship up the yin-yang. I mean, it's undeniable.
Yeah, Rod's a professor at Berkeley. And,
right.
So I think that, if people did their homework, there's still a little bit of that, but not as much as, even 10 years ago. It was bad. I mean, Winger got it worse than anybody else.
Yeah, and it certainly wasn't merited. Talk to me about this. Well, I was a fan of Winger. I'm still a fan of Winger. I think Better Days is, I don't know if I want to say it's one of your best or the best, but Jesus Christ, sorry for the language, but Better Days is. It was one of the top 3 releases of 2014, and in terms of the Winger catalog, probably top 2. It's just a great album. And the one,
thank you very much.
What was the one before? Karma.
Karma. That's my favorite.
I think, well, that's what I'm thinking. I think Karma might be number 1. So
yeah, for me it is. For me it is. That was the one that was kind of my baby.
Right.
Because Kip was coming off his classical stuff, and he wasn't in the mindset for Winger. And he said, I got nothing. He said, what direction do you want to go in? And I just played the riff of Deal with the Devil. And I said, I want the whole album to sound like this, just total bang your head rock and roll. And that's what we did. We wrote it in 10 days.
Wow, that's unbelievable. And I remember listening to it the first time. It showed up on the desk kind of thing, and I went, okay, Winger from the days I liked. I saw them with Kiss, and it was just a punch in the face, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm in. And then I went and bought the Japanese version with the bonus tracks. I said, okay, I need more of this. So, sold.
Wow, that's really nice. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And absolutely sincere too. So I know we're supposed to be talking Whitesnake. So talk to me a little bit. Of course, talk to me a little bit about the Greatest Hits show in terms of what can fans expect to see, and just the catalog itself. I mean, it's so deep and so rich. How do you actually come up with like 15 greatest hits? It's almost impossible.
Well, not for Whitesnake.
Right.
That's the thing. Every band I've been in, we haven't been able to do a greatest hits tour. Winger only had 6 hits, and which is pretty good. But you don't have a whole show worth of hits. So I've never been able to experience this as a musician, and it is fantastic. And I knew it would be, But, for all these years, I've been out here playing, and there's always a dog in the set. There's always a new song that, that David or somebody wants to promote it, in Dokken or in any other band, in Night Ranger, they have new stuff, and people don't want to hear that so much. They want to hear familiar songs. And when you start playing an unfamiliar song, be it a new song or a really old song that they don't know, a lot of people just start texting and, they go take a bathroom break. That isn't happening on this tour. It is just hit after hit. It's just like Eddie Money. Like I saw Eddie Money live, and it was like every single song is a hit. And you're going like, oh my God, I forgot about that song. That's what this is. It's just a compilation of every song that was a hit for him. And it makes up an hour and a half of music. And here's the great news is that David, something wacky's going on with his voice. It is like, I don't think I've ever heard his voice this spot on. Something happened. He quit drinking and he sounds like he's young again. Like all of a sudden he's young again. It's crazy. He's singing spot on in tune and he's hitting that note in Crying in the Rain now, which, it was kind of hit or miss a few years ago on that note. It's that huge scream, thunderous scream that he does. I looked over at the bass player last night with my mouth just hanging open, and his mouth was hanging open too. Like, oh my God, he's just pegging it every night so far on this tour. And, I think that is the real impactful thing about this show is that the guy's out there, he's 64 years old, and he's just belting out these incredibly difficult songs.
Yeah, and it's going to be a sight to see. Before the tour started, there had been some suggestions that maybe this would be sort of a farewell tour, or this might be the last one. Are you getting that sense? Is that sort of no? Okay.
That's the thing. I'm not getting that sense. It's possible. This all could change. David, 3 months from now, David could be like, I've had it. I'm throwing in the towel. You don't know. But at this point, he is raring to go. I mean, he doesn't seem like he's ever going to stop right now. And I know that David's never going to stop doing music. He's always thinking about new ways of selling things. He could do an acoustic album. He could do a blues album. He's always thinking of new ideas to release a different kind of music and going down another road. He's like a little kid, He just loves creating stuff.
Yeah, he's great. And he did an acoustic album years ago called Tokyo Stalkers or Starkers or something like that. And that album, it only came out in Japan, is absolutely brilliant. I mean, I don't know if you've heard it.
Oh, wow.
It's if you don't have it, I'll bring you a copy.
I heard of it.
I'll bring you a copy if you want. It's brilliant.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, he says it's really good. He's the one who told me it's really good.
Oh, it's beyond good.
And someone else told me too. Doug Aldrich told me about it.
Yeah, it's beyond good. Recently, Deep Purple were elected into the Hall of Fame, and you got a chance to tackle some of the catalog on the Purple album, which came out last year. What was that experience like for you? And when David approached and said, hey, we're going to do Burn and Mistreated, did you sort of go, oh, okay. Like, how was that for you digging into those riffs?
Well, I had a different vision than David did.
Okay.
The second that David told me about that, I got incredibly excited because I had my own vision, which was I'm going to recreate this sound because I co-produced it, And I said, all right, let's make it sound 70s. Let's go back to an old sound of just the band, just two guitars, bass, drums, and organ, and that's it. One vocal, maybe one background vocal, just like a 70s band. That was my idea. And David shot that down in flames right away, like, absolutely not. That's not what we're doing, Rebel. And his thing was, it's Whitesnake. We're going to make this sound like Whitesnake. It's going to be a big 80s production with 1 million guitars. And, he wanted it to sound like a wall of tanks coming over the hill for an attack. And that was the approach he wanted to take. And, it's his thing. And so that's what we did. And I was really happy with it. You know, we put a lot of work into it. And for me, the big thing for me was playing Mistreated. That was so huge. I can't tell you, you know, and I went in there, I started riffing right away, and he was like, Rebel, take your time. You know, you've got a long way to go. And he was writing a really long solo. So you can't just show all your tricks right at the beginning. You got to kind of ease into it.
That's funny. And it must have, of course, been exciting for you to pull out those albums and learn these songs, because you probably had them in the back of your head somewhere anyways. And, you know.
I'd never heard them.
Of
Of course, Burn and Mistreated I'd heard, but, you know, a lot of that stuff, Come Taste the Band, I'd never heard that record.
Really?
I didn't even know it was Tommy Bolin on guitar. Well, I thought it was, you know, Blackmore.
Really? Okay.
Blackmore sounds different.
Yeah.
Well, I was 11 or something when it came out.
Well, yeah.
You know, I had the one with Highway Star. I mean, that was kind of, you know, the big one.
Oh, so that must have been even then more exciting to discover these songs then, because anyway, there's some great stuff.
No, I was a Blackmore fan, just from Rainbow. I liked Rainbow.
Right.
Yeah.
How can you not like Rainbow?
So I was, yeah, and they played Mistreated, and that's how I knew Mistreated. I didn't know Mistreated from Deep Purple. I knew it from Rainbow. Sorry.
So there you go. That's
I could get fired later.
Yeah.
I may get fired.
Well, we'll edit this part out.
Okay.
Talking about other bands that were huge, and certainly a huge influence on me was Alice Cooper, and you got to play with Alice, and I saw one of those shows like 2000 or something like that. When was that? Anyway.
Yeah, it was in the 90s.
Yeah, it was late. Anyway, it was like 20 years ago. So,
yeah,
what was that like for you playing with Alice? And you know, the musicians I've spoken with that have been in his band always, at some point, say to me, "I learned a lot. I saw a lot." What was that experience like for you?
Alice is a father figure.
Yeah,
and he was. More of a father figure to me, I think, than a lot of the other guys, because he really took me under his wing, and I learned so much from him just because he's a consummate performer, and he really understands the stage, and you know, he knows all these old Broadway sayings that make a lot of sense, like always leave them wanting more. And, you know, he taught me stuff like that, but also, you know, there was no one else like Alice that would come on the bus with you and play cards with you all night. You know, telling stories about hanging out and doing cocaine with Groucho Marx, you know, drinking a case of beer and a bottle of vodka with John Lennon. Unbelievable stories that he tells. And he's such a wonderful guy. You know, he's super funny, really smart. He's got a gorgeous wife and kids. He's a family man, plays golf every day. Unbelievable, this guy. You know, I was so inspired by him. Like, he is the coolest guy I've ever met. He's the coolest guy on the planet, if you ask me.
Yeah, and one of the hardest working, great sense of work ethic is what I'm looking for. I mean, he's just unbelievable. Do you look back at that and wish you had stayed longer, or it served its purpose?
It was a step. You know, when I told him I was going to Dokken, he said, you know, Alice Cooper is a stepping stone for musicians. It always has been. And Dokken was a better gig, by far. You know, as far as exposure.
Really? Back in the 90s, it was a better gig?
Yes, hell yes. It was the Reb Beach show. Don would, you know, show up drunk, and, you know, not that I was, you know, sober. And we had a really good time. I mean, I'm not saying that's why it was a better gig. No, it was a better gig because of the exposure. Don would come on stage, he'd sing a couple songs, and then he'd walk off stage, and I'd solo for like 10 minutes, just with, you know, Pilson and Wild Mick were just the best in the world. They're going dun 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 dun. They would do that for an hour, and I would just solo, and I got really good on guitar doing Dokken. And I think that was just, to take George Lynch's place. Everyone had their eye on me, and before that, I was just the guy in Winger,
right.
And Winger wasn't really known as a flashy guitar band. I mean, I did get lucky with the Headed for Heartbreak solo. Richie Sambora, when I met him, he said, "Man, you're the luckiest guitar player in rock." And I'm like, "Why, Richie Sambora?" I mean, I couldn't believe I was talking to him. He said, "Because you got that solo on Headed for a Heartbreak or whatever. That's the longest guitar solo on the radio, man. Have you ever heard my guitar solos?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess you're right." Like his guitar solos are like 3 seconds long,
Right, in and out.
Yeah, in and out. So that's that really helped me. But that was really all I was known for. And I wasn't thought of as a guy who could have taken George Lynch's place. So I thought I did a good job. I wrote that record with Jeff. They were playing. They were going to release a Beatles album. Basically, it was just all Beatlesy stuff. And I'm like, "No, listen, you're Dokken. I love Dokken. It's got to be, rocking with Dokken."
It's got to be.
Yeah. So we wrote that stuff. They had a song called "Erase The Slate," and I changed that all around and wrote the riff, and we changed everything around and made it cool.
I do say that our time is up, but I got to ask you about that Erase the Slate album, because it is sort of like one of the guitar albums for Dokken. I mean, that stuff is just, Mad as Hatter and Erase the Slate.
That's cool. That. That's really awesome. That stuff.
Well, of course. Listen, I've bought all these albums. I've grown up with all these albums, and I happen to be friends with Jeff Pilson, who I think is, well, maybe the second hardest working man in show business after Alice Cooper. He is just a talent, beyond.
Yeah.
He sings like a madman, plays bass like a,
he's a great guy. I love Jeff.
Jeff is fantastic, and if I am allowed to say this, I think he saved Foreigner. No offense to people, but I really think he really, anyway. But do you have a moment just to talk about Erase the Slate and what that album was for you? Because it took Dokken from the doldrums of the 80s and pulled it out of that, Nirvana killed all of this, blah, blah, blah. And people just went, "Oh, these guys, yeah." Like it full attention back on the band with that album.
Thank you. That's really great. I think they lost sight of who they were.
Well,
and
everybody
what they were about.
did.
And I was a fan. I when I was doing sessions and writing the first songs for Winger, I was listening to Under Lock and Key every day on that PATH train from Hoboken into the city. I'd listen to Under Lock and Key faithfully every day, and that sound to me was just their sound, and I was a huge fan. And I came in and they had all these songs that were just not them. It was all Beatlesy, like I said. So we just started from scratch, and me and Jeff, and just wrote some rock tunes. Don wrote the lyrics, and I think I inspired them to. I'm not tooting my own horn. I think that's just the truth. I inspired them to go back to that sound. And they did that's their sound, it really is. And, it was a great record for sure. I like every song on that record, believe it or not.
No,
the drum sounds, I'm not crazy about the drum sounds on that record, but, it's a great record.
Yeah, it is. And of course, I think those Beatles songs ended up being that Long Way Home album. And, you were also on that live, From the Sun Dokken live album. And, that's one of the sort of greatest live albums that was ever made, because it's solid from start to finish, and you and Jeff and the band sounds great. It's too bad that it sort of slipped under the radar, but it is an incredibly fantastic live album. And anybody who's listening to this should definitely find it and buy it and do whatever. It's great.
Well, thanks. I got to play a solo that I really like, and I lucked out that I played it well that night, because it was hit or miss with that solo, because it's totally improvised on a song called Too High to Fly, It's one of those deals where Don just leaves the stage and just, I get to go for as long as I want. It's all up to me. I can just keep playing all night long, and they don't care. Jeff and Wild Mick, they can just play. They can lay down that groove as long as you want. They're perfectly happy doing it, and they do it really well. It's fun. I miss being in Dokken. I really do.
Yeah, no, it's a great band. Listen, our time is up, but I'm very much looking forward to seeing you at the Casino Rama next June 18th, next week. And always a pleasure, Reb. And, of course, we've got to do interviews more than every 12 or 13 years or whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Great pleasure.
Anytime, Mitch. Will I see you at the show?
Absolutely. I will be there, and I should be backstage. I've been talking to Joel, so that should be all taken care of.
Oh, Joel, yeah, he'll hook you up.
Yeah, listen, the combination of guitars in Whitesnake right now between you and Joel is like godlike. So,
right on. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you then.
Okay, Mitch.
Bye-bye.
See you then.
And there you have it, folks, my interview with guitarist extraordinaire Reb Beach. Do yourself a favor and check out Whitesnake on their Greatest Hits tour this summer. Speaking of tours, let's head over to Mötley Crüe's farewell tour. Director Christian Lamb is bringing that to the big screen via The End, the Mötley Crüe movie. Let's get right into this one. Here is director Christian Lamb talking about Mötley Crüe and The End. We are speaking with Mötley Crüe The End's director, Christian Lamb. Good day, Christian. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Lots to talk about. We've got this Mötley Crüe movie coming out in June. Well, let's just start with the basic questions. I know that you do all kinds of stuff with Rihanna and Tori Amos and Madonna and all those. How did you get connected with Mötley Crüe?
That actually came directly through producers that I worked with in the past, Nate Parienti and Dominic Cotter. We had done many projects, overseas and in the States in the past, and they told me about Mötley Crüe. And we ended up on a plane to Minneapolis. I'd never seen the band perform live, actually, so that was the first for me. And we got to sit down, all of us as a collective, there in Minneapolis before the show. Tommy, Nikki was there, and management. And we started to kind of pitch those ideas back and forth. And that really is where it all coalesced.
So talk to me a little bit about that side of it, the whole sort of pre-production side. Since you hadn't seen Mötley Crüe play live before, do you have to end up going to like 5 or 6 or 7 shows to get it? Or is it one of those where you sit down and you go, okay, I got this. I know what to do?
In a perfect world, you want to see it as much as you can, obviously, because you really need to just immerse yourself as much as possible. I mean, and the bottom line is when you're capturing a live event, the more you learn, the better you are at capturing it. But at the same time, a rock show generally lends itself to being a little bit more improvisational. It's not a choreographed show like a Madonna or a Beyonce. It's rock. So there has to be some freedom in what you're doing in the end. So the one show, was adequate. I soaked it all up, and when we went back to LA, I started to roll up my sleeves, and we came up with a plan. We started to map out our camera positions and try to capture those moments that are the biggest. Whether it was the big pyro moments, whether it was Nikki running back and forth or Vince running back and forth to the corners of the stages. Obviously we wanted to have our cameras prepped for any of these moments. So it was a lot of homework. It was a lot of watching video and digesting it all. But in the end, we got that game plan together and we had a strategy for everything.
Do you also head over to rehearsals and shoot sort of a live run-through rehearsal just in case anything goes wrong? Because something did go wrong during one of these filmings. Was there sort of this backup B-roll, if you want, for the lack of a better word?
We didn't film any rehearsals. It was pretty much just the 2 nights. It was the performance on the 30th and the 31st. And you're right, we did have a malfunction on the 31st with Tommy's coaster, but in the end, that was kind of a blessing in disguise.
Right, because it actually shows that it's live. Now, do you also meet with the band and go over the set list, and do they call you up or sit down with you and say, we want this kind of shot on this kind of song, or we want you to have this kind of look for this, for Home Sweet Home. It needs to be shot in a softer, is there any kind of direction like that?
Not necessarily coming from the band. I think they, really entrusted me to capture things as I saw them, and I did see the songs in different ways. And, I did want the cameras, in those certain positions to capture those different songs. So really it was on my shoulders much more than anything coming from them. So, and it was great that way. I mean, that allowed me to really have, those freedoms in order to kind of capture those things in very specific ways. Because you're right, Home Sweet Home is a much different capture than, say, Shout at the Devil, and you see that in the cut.
Yeah, you really do. Talk to me a little bit about, because I know you're Madonna's video, or what would you call it, visual director, video director. How is that different than shooting a rock band? When you shoot a Rihanna and when you shoot a Jennifer Lopez, is it just all the same thing, or is it really a major difference?
Obviously every artist is unique. Every artist, has their own restrictions, their own creative, so, it's all organic. Rock bands, as I was saying earlier, I think you have more freedoms. There aren't those really specific choreographed moments. I think the guys, when they get on stage, they embellish the show. And at the same time, directing in kind of a capture, you're embellishing. So when you work in a Madonna world or you work in a Jennifer Lopez world, et cetera, there are those finite moments. It's like, you have to nail this. You have to tell the story in this way, capture this and this and this. So it's a completely different beast.
Yeah, it really is. Okay, so let me ask you about you then. How does one get started? Because I've gone to shows since 1979. I've been totally fascinated. I see easily 150 a year. How do you become the visual director for Madonna, and just how do you get into this business?
Well, I grew up on the road. Cameron Crowe did Almost Famous. It resonated with me because it, in some ways, paralleled my life. My father was a production manager, and I was touring from the time I was 6 years old with Queen and Fleetwood Mac and all these other bands. So that was kind of already in my blood, being around music, seeing music. And then, as I started to grow up, I got into filmmaking and feature films, commercials, music videos, etc. And I really kind of deviated away from touring per se. Eventually, when touring became more of a visual medium, that drew me back into it. And really, I started out building graphics and design. Incubus was my first big break in 2000. And then from there, I kept moving into working with Shakira, Mariah Carey, Anastasia, Rihanna. It was just like this kind of upward trajectory with actually mostly female pop stars. And, I ended up with Madonna for probably longer than anybody. And she, in many ways, was the most inspirational artist that I've ever worked with.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, I noticed that you just sort of say off the cuff, while I was 6 years old touring with Queen and Fleetwood Mac. Take me back to that. So your dad was on the road with those two bands. What did you see going on, and what did you learn in those experiences? Because, obviously Queen and Fleetwood Mac just weren't playing bars at the local, they're not playing the local Starbucks. What was that like for a 6-year-old?
It's tough to quantify it because, you're six.
Right.
You have no frame of reference. That was my reality. And, as much as I look back and it absolutely was extraordinary, back then, that was just my childhood. And, I would get put on a plane and travel to these different countries and see these incredible shows, whether it's, Wembley Stadium or, whether it was, a show at the Tokyo Dome. I was kind of bouncing all over the globe at that point, and that just became normal to me.
Well, it's amazing. Now, obviously, your dad wasn't doing video production at that time because the technology wasn't there, or was he doing some kind of visual work with those bands?
No, he's much more kind of the general out there in charge of logistics more than anything else. It's he doesn't really work in that creative realm. And to be honest, touring was never appealing to me until it became more of a visual medium.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree. So let's talk about the visual medium. When you go to a concert, they have those big screens behind the stage or behind the band on stage that we all see now, where we've all become very accustomed to. And you do the visuals where if there's a song going on and a flower shows up. How do you put together a video montage for a band? Walk me through the process in terms of the creative process. Obviously, the bands come to you and say, "We want this," and then how do you go about putting it all together?
Again, it's entirely different for each artist.
Right.
Some artists are very specific in what they want, and they'll give you parameters, and you kind of pitch ideas based within those parameters. Other artists, the sky's the limit. It's an open canvas, and you can really, kind of pull from all these different inspirations to try to kind of galvanize their interest. So it's different every time. It really is.
Now back to the end. During the movie, there are obviously the live scenes, and then there are interviews. Talk to me about getting those interviews and trying to capture each member's personality.
Well, when we started this meeting in Minneapolis, and we were really probably 4 weeks out from shooting. So being against the gun like that, we had to bring in extra help. And management had suggested Jeff Tremaine, who had worked with the band in the past. So we brought him in to kind of focus on the band. And we kind of went through questions back and forth of how to approach them, what to ask them, get them kind of on that parallel questionnaire where we could, in post, edit them kind of with and against each other. So that's what we ended up doing is we created, these separate vignettes for each one of them. And then we also went out and interviewed the crew, some of these guys who really make things happen. And I think, when we got into the edit room, I was with Jonathan Covert. He and I spent the better part of 3 weeks, every single day, 12 hours a day, hammering through all this documentary footage, hammering through all the live multicam footage. It was a huge process to get those interviews together, to give them some semblance of sense, to get their personalities captured, to really give each one of the guys equal weight. There were a lot of masters to serve really in that edit, and we poured ourselves into it just to get to where we got.
Yeah, and it looks great. Talk to me also about making this into a movie, because when you sit down to watch sort of a live DVD in your home, you want to see the show from start to finish, and you sort of want the interviews to be, the bonus tracks at the end. Here you've inserted them into the actual movie. Was that part of this vision of, okay, we're going to be on these big screens in theaters, so it has to tell a compelling story rather than just be...
Well, I think, that was part of it, but in the end, anything that I'm doing, I want to have a story to it. There has to be some kind of a narrative to it. It's just visual fluff is really only so engaging. It's tough for people to sit through a concert film, when it's just the concert. I think there has to be other elements in it. There has to be a story. You have to hear voices. You have to get, a peer behind the curtain. It's really the only way to really keep people, engaged in that way. It's one thing to be live at an event and really be there for the kind of that visceral experience. But when you're watching it in 2 dimensions on a flat screen, it has to have some kind of a documentary element to it. So I think from the get-go, from inception, that was always going to be the case. And especially being as iconic of a show as this was, there's this finality to it. And so absolutely, we had to get into that story. And those points all had to be made. We had to hear the guys. We had to hear their perspectives and what was going on in their heads approaching this. So, yeah, in the end, I think it was always going to be more of a narrative.
Yeah, and it makes sense for the big screen to have that, because I've gone to cinemas and I've sat through, an hour and a half of a band playing, and you're going, yeah, that would be great in my living room, but why am I in the cinema? So I'm glad you did that. Will you go back and work on the film in terms of Blu-ray release or DVD release, or at this point it's out of your hands?
If called upon, absolutely. I mean, there's no plan in place as of yet, but when it comes down to it, we have a huge volume of footage. There's a number of extras we could put in there, if it's desired. So I'm really kind of waiting to see what that holds.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. I do want to go back to the Tommy Lee incident where his drum roller coaster, I guess for the lack of a better word, stopped functioning. When that happens and it's going down live and you're filming it and whoops, what's running through your head at that moment?
Sheer panic.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously you've seen it run again and again, flawlessly. And, I mean, even during sound checks and everything else, we tested it and everything was running fine. But yeah, to have that happen in the moment, absolutely. And there was a lot of frustration with it. It kind of killed the pacing. Everything was really rolling at that point. We were in a groove. I think everybody was, collectively. And, when that happened, it was just the train kind of screeching to a halt. So I think everybody had to regroup from the band all the way down to, all of us shooting this. And, it was one of those situations where we did get back on track. We did finish out the show. And, when I sat down to edit it, it became actually more intriguing to me that it happened than if it hadn't happened. Because it is rock and roll. It is this live environment, and these things happen. I made that analogy that it was like Spinal Tap being stuck in the cocoon. It's like, this is real. When Rob Reiner went out and toured, Spinal Tap is all based on reality. And this is what happens. This is it. And we didn't want to be disingenuous and try to hide this fact and make it look like, it was this perfect show, because it wasn't. But at the same time, Tommy pulled it off in such a way that only Tommy, I think, really could. He held it together. The entire crowd was chanting his name by the end. It really became a story unto itself. If you went on social media afterwards, you saw it was blowing up on Twitter. It was blowing up on people's Instagrams. Everybody was talking about this incident. So, when it came time to actually do this final edit, at that point, it wasn't even really a choice. We had to tell the story, and we had to be truthful about it. And in the end, like I said, it adds a different element to the show that makes it real. It makes it feel humanistic.
Yeah, it really does, and it's a testament to what you guys do to be able to pull it off like that. But there you go. From now on, or from this point on, where does Christian Lamb go? Are you back on tour with Madonna? Are you going to work on a Def Leppard movie? Where are you going? What's the next project for you?
Well, I was lucky enough to work with the Def Leppard guys. Funny you mentioned it, on that Vegas show, which was great. But no, I'm actually currently working with Beyonce. So I'm here in Boston, and I'm helping to kind of shape the live show for her. Because we're working on this mammoth scale with this huge monolith that's 60 by 60 foot screen. So I'm basically in the process of traveling with her at this point.
Oh, that's kind of exciting. My daughter, by the way, would love all these bands that you're working with. I love the metal. I love the Def Leppard and the Mötley Crüe and stuff. But there you go. Kristen, it's been a great pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Mitch.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And there you have it, folks. My interview with Mötley Crüe's The End producer, Christian Lamb. Up front, we had Reb Beach, of course, of Whitesnake. Thank you to both gentlemen for being on the show today. And with that, do head over to Twitter. Check me out at Mitch Lafon, MITCHLAFON, and on Facebook, One-on-One Mitch Lafon. Thank you for listening. More great shows coming up in the next few weeks. So there you go. That's it. We're done. Bye for now. Oh my.